Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Matt Anderson here with me today. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, sir. Where are you living at these days?
I am in Greensboro, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Is it still warm down there?
No.
Oh, no?
It was until recently, but it's like 25 degrees at night right now. So it gets cold down here in the wintertime.
Wow. I think everybody just got hit with the with a slight Arctic blast recently. It's been getting cold over here where I am too.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank each and every one of you who are coming into the building. We are in for a great story today. This man is doing some profound work in the lives of others and in his community where he is as well. And I want you to tag along for the conversation. Text someone, tag someone, tell someone to join in. Now, Matt, where are you from? Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania originally. So born and raised there from 0 to 18.
Whoa. What is the tagline? What's the tagline for Pittsburgh? It's the city of
Steel City.
The Steel City.
It's the city of champions too, though.
I guess I'll let you slide with that.
It's the city of champions, man. Six Super Bowl trophies, six Lombardis. So we're doing all right. And Penguins and Pirates have racked up some too. So if we had a basketball team, we'd have some trophies there too, I think.
Oh, you're feeling good about your hometown, huh?
If you're from Pittsburgh, you carry a lot of pride with it. It's a great city. I love it.
Do you have memories of times when Pittsburgh won a championship and it just caused total jubilee in your home and in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I was born in 1979, so the 80s were pretty rough. Growing up, particularly the Steelers. I mean, I grew up a Steelers fan and a Penguins fan. I never really got into baseball. Never been much of a Pirates fan. So you might remember the early 90s. We had a couple hockey players in town, Lemieux and Yager. So they won 2 Stanley Cups when I was a kid. And that was a big deal because in Pittsburgh, if you were my age, so we were like, I don't know, middle school age, something like that, maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade, somewhere in that time frame. The Penguins were winning Stanley Cups. Everybody was out playing street hockey. Like, we had 3 p.m. games against the rival elementary school, where we'd go play street hockey. And so everybody was into it and they were winning and, everybody was super excited. I remember my brother, who's a lot older than I am, was playing in like a pickup ice hockey league in the city. And so he took me to one of the games, I think the day after the Stanley Cup. And everybody was going crazy at the game. All these guys were, just having fun playing hockey, but singing and carrying on. And that was a fun time. I remember everybody wanted to be Lemieux when I was growing up. So
sure. So you grew up playing hockey. You were a hockey player when you were younger.
I mean, we played a lot of street hockey as a kid, but I never played ice hockey. And I played baseball one year. I hated it. I'm not the biggest person in the world, so I never thought football was my sport. So I got into lacrosse actually in junior high, and I played lacrosse through college actually. So that was kind of my thing from a team sport point of view. But I played a lot of basketball since college. I played a lot of soccer, a lot of basketball, just pick up stuff. I mean, I've always been an athlete in the sports and snowboarding, mountain biking, all that kind of stuff.
So Pittsburgh is a place for a lot of that type of stuff. You guys got a lot of hills, you got a lot of bridges, you got the steel industry. So there was a lot of hard work that went into everybody's veins, and put on top of that a championship attitude.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's a blue collar city. People show up, work hard, and they try to win.
Yep, without a doubt. So now, can you take me through a day in your life as a 10-year-old?
Oh man, as a 10-year-old, I mean, that's an interesting age that you tapped into. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of rough, to be honest.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I'll just give you a little bit of kind of my kind of background, family background. I mean, I'm the youngest of 6 kids.
Okay.
And so it's kind of Brady Bunch style though, right? So my mom and dad married. My dad had 3 kids prior, and then, you know, after they married, they had 2 kids, me and my sister. So we shared the same parents. So I had 3 half siblings, and then they had a half sibling as well. So it was the 6 of us growing up together from, you know, when I was born until about 10 years old, 9, 10 years old. And it was, I mean, it was, to be honest, it was I mean, there's a lot of chaos going on around the house, around the family, and, you know, lots, you know, divorces, you know, you know, parent family, step siblings, all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't the healthiest environment, and I think everybody was just trying to make it work and kind of, you know, survive through it. But, you know, I mean, there was alcoholism in the house, and, you know, just things weren't great. And so my parents divorced when I was 9, 10 years old. And so at that point, my oldest siblings, like some of them were already in college. They were gone out of the house, and, you know, not everybody was. But so my mom left my dad, took me and my sister, and, you know, we went and moved in with my grandparents.
Hold on.
Sure.
There's a lot going on in your life at a fairly fast pace, and I want to break some of this stuff. I want to break some of this stuff down, because it's moments like these that allow so many more people to connect with you. Now, when your parents separated or divorced, as you say, and you had older siblings who were in college already, how did you feel? How did that make you feel as a young kid? How old were you when this actually happened?
Like 9, 10 years old.
9, 10 years old. How did that impact you when that happened, and how did it change your perspective about life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was hard, right? I mean, it was hard as a little kid to have all of that happen, right? My whole family life kind of turned upside down. And I think as I look back on it, like, it's not a surprise, right? Because things weren't super smooth, you know, in the house and in the family leading up to that. Even though I was so young, you know, it's hard to really understand. But, you know, I knew things, you know, my parents would fight, and, you know, things weren't great. And so when my parents separated, you know, it came as a shock, because I'm a little kid and I'm trying to figure out what that means. And it was painful, and I was confused and probably scared and sad. Like, all of those different kinds of emotions were going on. But I think even at the time, I probably was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. But then it was like I had to as a 10-year-old kid, I had to kind of refigure out, like, what is my relationship now with my parents? Like, my dad's still, you know, still there, you know, but I don't live with him. I don't see him every day. I don't see him all the time. You know, he was trying to get himself together a little bit. And, you know, so I had to kind of, you know, navigate those kinds of relationships. And I think it impacted me, you know, in the sense of, like, honestly, you know, at that age, to have that kind of disruption in the family, it makes me thoughtful about, you know, relationships. And, you know, so it's, you know, it has some lasting effects. It also, you know, taught me about the importance of family.
Absolutely.
And it's why I do the work that I do in large part, you know. My grandparents were for me, and certainly me, my sister, and my mom, I would say, but just speaking for myself, my grandparents were my rock at that point, because we went, like, you know, they took us in, you know, me and my mom and my sister moved in with them, lived with them until my mom could get settled again and we could move out. And, you know, they took care of us. And I've been incredibly close with my grandparents, even before then, but ever since. You know, my grandfather passed away a number of years ago. My grandma's 94 years old and still going strong. She's amazing, you know, and incredible health, you know, all that. So they're really, really important people in my life. And I think without those relationships and the strength of those relationships and their stability and supporting me and caring about me and being interested in me and supporting me, and my mom and my sister too, my cousins, but they, you know, they were just always there, and they were always so good to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it helped me through it.
Let me ask you something. Did anything ever make you feel better about the scenario? Did your father come around 3 times a week? Did you see them get along from time to time? Did you have that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, I mean, I spent a lot of time with my dad through high school, and then I went off to college, and I guess we'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, he was always around. You know, I think at the end of the day, my parents, you know, figured out how to have a relationship together that was, you know, in the best interest of me and my sister, right?
Sure.
So that, you know, he was in my life, and he was around, and he was, you know, being the best dad that he could be, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that was it. I mean, it was big. I mean, you know, I think I was lucky in a lot of ways.
Sure. Now, I'm noticing how we are going into a new paradigm today. We are reevaluating humanness everywhere you look. I mean, sometimes I'm watching a commercial and it's all about human connection, helping one another, hope and healing, and then it's a Nike commercial. Yeah. And so everywhere you look, I think that the world is kind of shifting into a new paradigm. But it's like no matter how many people I talk to, they always, almost 7 times out of 10, end up talking about the instrumental role that their grandmother played in their lives. And so I'm thinking, was there a paradigm shift that we don't really talk about? Something must have been happening in that 60s and 70s era where, you know, so many of our parents were living a certain type of lifestyle that just resulted in a little bit of disruption. And then the generation before, which is everybody's grandparents, had to step in and take over. I mean, so many people I talk to, Matt, their grandparents, specifically their grandmother, had to step in and raise them. So, I mean, what was going on that we need to talk about so that we could avoid it in the future?
To avoid in the future, I don't know about that. That's a big question. I will say that, I mean, grandmas are the best, right? I mean,
grandmas are definitely the best. Maybe I can clarify my own question a little bit, or evaluate my own question a little bit.
Okay.
This is my theory, right? Short time on Earth. This is my theory.
Okay.
People were so busy watching the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Penguins, and you know, just having a good time and happy that we're not in a depression era of a couple decades before. Happy that, you know, we're not as downtrodden as a whole society as we were a couple decades before. Everybody's feeling a little bit more liberation. You know, I think Woodstock even was around that era of time. And so people were just in an era of celebration. And I think that they were in so much of a celebration that sometimes you get a little bit removed from the seriousness and the structure and the order and the mandate that is raising children. I think that a lot of our parents got caught up in that. They were partying. They were partying.
Okay. And then the grandparents had to kind of step in and keep things together. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, my grandparents, I mean, they're the greatest generation, right? You know, so all of my grandparents, I mean, they grew up through the Depression. My grandfather was a prisoner of war during World War II. You know, he came out, he, you know, was liberated by the Russian army, you know, captured in the Battle of the Bulge. And then came back, you know, to the States, luckily. And, GI Bill, went to college, was able to pay for college that way, and started working and, building his family. And it was just sort of, I don't know. I mean, that generation just had to do what was necessary to make it through. And then, I think they're just attuned to like, okay, now I've got to do what's necessary as grandparents. Like I had to do it as a kid. I had to do it as a young adult. I had to do it as a parent. Now I have to do it as a grandparent. They just make it happen. They make it work.
See, I believe that with a little bit more research that we're onto something right here in this conversation. We are in the midst of we are in the midst of everybody shifting into a virtual reality. Everything is going virtual right now. Our children are on social media. Our children are going to school virtually. Everybody's shifting into a virtual reality. So there's a big shift going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Back in your grandparents' day, right? When your grandparents were growing up, your grandfather probably was told that he had to go to the service. Several times out of 10, he was supposed to go to the service. Your grandmother was supposed to do the things that she did. And it's like this. You could be looking at a 15-year-old, but by his conversation or by her conversation and the decisions that they make, you could mistake them for 20 or 30 years old back then.
Sure.
So they ended up providing a life for their children, which was your parents, where they could grow up and listen to disco. They could grow up and eventually, whether it be listen to hip hop, rock and roll, get into a certain subculture and live a more free life. That was a paradigm shift. Right?
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, your grandparents, so many of our grandparents have to step in. And I think that today we're also going into a paradigm shift where if we're not careful, our parents are going to have to step in again and take care of our children. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, but sometimes too, like pendulum swing, right? So, if our generation grew up a certain way with our parents, and you either kind of follow, I mean, it's not either or, but, you tend to follow in your parents' footsteps because that's what you saw, that's what you know, that's what you learned, and you kind of do the same, or you kind of react and go in a different direction, right? And you kind of do the opposite and say, well, that didn't work for me. That's not what I wanted. So I'm gonna do something very different as a parent. So I don't know. I mean, I think generations to generation, I think there's that dynamic playing out. And then I think you're talking about a more macro kind of shift that might be happening, as a new generation kind of comes up. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, we got to pay attention. Got to pay attention to the world, That's a constant thing, and we're raising awareness about that today. We've got to pay attention to our world. We got to pay attention to where it's going so that we can be prepared, because parenting is a never-ending mandate that's upon us. Everybody's got to figure out how to be a responsible adult some way, because some child is in need of our output. So now, what did high school look like for you?
Yeah, so high school was like mid 90s. So there was a movie called The Mid 90s. I don't know if you saw that one.
The 90s was one of the best decades of my life. I had 3.
Right. Yeah, it was great. No, it was, it was, I don't know, fairly normal, I guess, kind of high school experience. And I wasn't the best student. That wasn't really my thing. I think I had, by the time I got to college and figured out what I wanted to study and what I wanted to do and like where I was motivated, right? Then I became a really strong student. But in high school, not so much. So I kind of had to make my way through. I was into, like, early in high school, I was into skateboarding. Like, so early 90s, mid 90s, skateboarding kind of started to catch on a little bit. This is like pre-X Games, all that kind of stuff.
Who's your favorite skateboarders?
Oh man, Chad Muska just comes to mind right off the bat. Bucky Lasek. I don't know. I haven't thought about that in a while, but we were always watching like the Plan B skateboard videos. I mean, those were big. The 411 skateboard video series. Like, we were watching all that stuff, and it was a lifestyle. I mean, we were out kind of 24/7 skating every single day, and And I loved it because it was like the older I get, the more I realize that there's like a strong creative bent within me. And skateboarding is an incredibly creative outlet.
Right.
You know, and so I think I loved it for that. I mean, it kind of brought together the athletic and the purely creative in a way that I think just made sense to me. So I loved it, and that was a lot of what was going on for me in high school.
When you say that skateboarding was your creative outlet, who taught you how to skateboard? Who helped you? Somebody showed you how to kick and push. Come on, man.
I remember when that song came out. So I started skateboarding like in 9th grade, probably. I started snowboarding, I think, in 7th grade. And so my friend and I, who like we were friends from diapers, and so we decided to start snowboarding. And then I made some friends my freshman year of high school, and like all the different schools kind of came together in high school. So like Dave Stockhausen, Mike Jones, Brandon Wolf, Eric Frischkorn, Ben Hayner, bunch of guys. Like that was the crew. And I think Dave was the person I met first, and he was starting to skate, or he had already started to skate. And so he brought me into his crew of friends that were skating. Mm-hmm. And so they taught me. They started snowboarding. I taught them. And like some of those guys are still my best friends today.
Sure. So skating was a bonding activity for you. Any tips for young people out there trying to figure out how to skateboard today? They're scraping their knees, they're falling on their backs, and they're tired of it. Let's go.
I mean, that's life, right? You fall down and you get up. I mean, honestly, I mean, you know, you could probably take a lot of different sports and make it a metaphor for life, but I think skateboarding is a great one, right? I mean, it's really, really hard.
Yep.
And ollie is one of the hardest things to do, and that's the foundation of skateboarding. You know, every trick starts with an ollie, right? So you have to learn how to ollie first, and you're gonna have to commit yourself to it. You're gonna have to practice. You're gonna have to try. You're gonna have to make mistakes. You're gonna have to look foolish. You're gonna have to, you know, fall down and get back up. I mean, all of those different things play out throughout the rest of your life. But so, yeah, I mean, you're going to learn how to ollie and fall, and then you're going to ollie down a set of 2 stairs and you're going to fall. And then it's going to be 6 stairs and you're going to fall. And then it's, you know, you're going to, you know, grind the handrail and you're going to fall, but you're progressing the whole way. Right. So you just have to push yourself to learn and get better. And, you know, people teach you, and, you know, it's, you have fun along the way.
So after you started skateboarding, you also started snowboarding.
Yep.
And you got plenty of snow in Pittsburgh too.
Yeah, we did. So just right like an hour or so outside of the city, there are a couple places where we would go, and it's, you know, just go up there every weekend and snowboard. It was great.
But snowboarding is totally different from skateboarding, correct or not?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty different. You know, because, you know, wheels on the skateboard, and you're strapped in on bindings on the snowboard. So it's different. You know, it has a lot of similarities. I think, you know, it has a lot of like the culture, you know, a lot of people skateboard and snowboard. So that's pretty similar, and balance and all that kind of stuff. But it's, you know, it's a creative outlet too. And you're doing it with a group of friends, and you're having a good time, and, you know, so. That's right.
Yeah. And nowadays you see people zipping up and down the streets on motorized skateboards. Have you seen those?
Yeah, I see those sometimes. People have little remote controls, and
yeah,
I don't know. I've not done that yet.
I saw somebody on one wheel. They were standing up on one wheel. That wheel was going at least 15 miles an hour. Yeah,
there's some crazy stuff these days. I still watch. I mean, Instagram's been kind of nice to bring back the skateboard kind of reality for me, because there's just tons of skateboard content there, and people are doing some crazy stuff these days. It's fun to see. It's cool.
So what were your thoughts about college? And this is another juncture where I really want to kind of separate it out a little bit. What were your thoughts about college? Did you want to go to a college or university? Did you know the difference? Talk about that whole mix. What was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I went to the University of Montana.
Okay.
So I went from growing up in Pittsburgh and moved across the country to Missoula, Montana, which is it's a 30-hour drive.
Yeah. How'd you choose that? How'd you choose that?
It was my sister was already out there actually, and I mean I'd been out there as a kid with my dad and my sister, and loved it. And then my sister moved out there to go to college, and I went out to visit her. It was the winter time. I think it was the winter of '96, and there was the snow was great, and the snowboarding was great, and it seemed like a great college. I was really interested in outdoor activities, being in the mountains. I thought I was going to be, I mean, my first major was forestry, and wow, they have a great forestry school. And so I thought, this is incredible. Like, my sister's out there. I love the outdoors. I want to be in the mountains. I want to snowboard. I think I want to be in this forestry thing. And so it was, yeah, I didn't even apply to any other schools. Like I said, I wasn't a great student in high school, so I didn't have a lot of universities banging down my door to let me in. I could get into the University of Montana, and it seemed like a good fit for what I wanted to do at the time. And so I went there, and that was it. But it didn't. I came back to Pittsburgh after my first year because I wasn't ready yet to be, off on my own trying to figure life out.
Okay.
So.
Okay. In an alternate world, could you have been the guy on Animal Planet being dropped off in the middle of the forest with a couple matches and a book bag?
Oh yeah. What's that show called? The Bear Grylls show? Is that what we're talking about here?
Bear Grylls.
I don't know. Do I have the skills to do it just straight off? Like, if somebody picked me up today? No. Would I like to do it? I mean, I watched that show. I'm like, man, that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, I could get into that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we did a lot of backpacking and, spent a lot of time out in the woods.
Hiking and stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Matt Anderson. He has had quite a ride in life, from Montana to Pittsburgh, literally riding skateboards and snowboards. We're going to talk more about the work that he does today and why he does it right after this brief message. America's Next Motivator. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network. We're back. Matt, how you feeling out there?
Yeah, feeling great.
Hey, everybody who's watching our episode with us today, I appreciate you being here for this conversation and getting to know Matt Anderson. Matt, talk to us about the work that you do today.
The work that I do today. Okay, so I work for Children's Home Society of North Carolina. Okay. I've been here for 9 years with CHS. For the last, and I guess I've had a number of different roles over that time. So right now I'm vice president of programs and business development for CHS. So for the last 4 or 5 years or so, I've been responsible for our kind of governmental affairs, public policy, some of our partnership kind of work. And then also on the program side, our foster care program. And then we have a number of different adoption related programs that we run. So that's been my role. Our foster care program is pretty significant in terms of our reach and our size. We serve about 1,200 kids a year in our foster care program across the state of North Carolina. It's been interesting to do this work. I think it's obviously really important work. This is an opportunity for me to do really purpose-driven work, and for an organization that I really believe in and really appreciate being a part of. And the people that I work with are really great people. So it's been it's been a pleasure to be able to work here and do the work that we do. And on our foster care side, we've been really trying to make our foster care program the absolute best it can be. I always feel like the kids and families that we serve not just deserve our best and always getting better, but on some level, I feel like they demand it of us. And I don't know, if I don't want to put words in people's mouths, that's sort of how I feel about it. That if we're going to do this work, we need to be trying to find ways to get better all the time, because it matters. I mean, it matters that we're as good as we can. I also think, though, and this gets into what I'm doing now with the Institute for Family, which we're just in the process of launching as part of the Children's Home Society. The Institute for Family is really all about this idea that we need to, as a country, really need to elevate and advance this idea of family well-being. And I think when we think about family well-being, we should be thinking about how are families and communities doing across the country. Really how are they doing, and what are the conditions that families are facing, that can lead to significant stress within the household, that can then lead to things like child maltreatment, that can then lead to things like child welfare involvement, which can lead to kids being removed and placed into foster care. I think as a country, we need to get really focused on the issues around those kinds of questions. And the work I think ahead of us is, work that is family strengthening, with the ultimate goal of, we need to reduce our over-reliance on foster care.
Okay.
I think that, we have, over the course of a year, we have more than 700,000 kids who experience foster care. I just think that's too many.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Did you say that over the course of a year that 700,000 youth go through the foster care system?
Yeah, across the country, over the course of a year, it's about 700,000 kids who are in foster care.
Okay. So when you say a number like that, it just kind of like shakes the ground for me a little bit. Yeah. And I want to take this part of our conversation and make it as valuable as possible for everyone. Now, how are you all finding out about the wellness of families? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. How should we go about doing that, right? So, I mean, there are any number of indicators, I think, that we could probably look at, like, school readiness of within early childhood. So, reading rates and those sorts of things, or, infant health, or maternal health, poverty within certain communities. I think there are a number of things that we can look at that give us an indication of how families are doing. I think, I'm coming at it from a child welfare point of view, right? The child welfare system sees families in terms of how well they are doing at the worst, right? At the worst moments, at the most significant crisis in that family's life, which, is a report into social services of abuse and or neglect. And, that's where we start to get involved. And then we're starting to ask questions about how's this family doing? Or really, where the system that we've kind of created forces us to ask, what is the safety of this child? And then we respond and react around the safety needs of a child, which is a good and necessary thing, right? It's not that we shouldn't be asking about the safety of the child, but when we're really only asking about the safety of the child, then we're not asking the questions about how is this family doing? And then our interventions are based around the questions that we're asking about the safety of the child instead of the well-being of the family. And I think that's the shift that we have to start making in this country. And it's not going to be the job of the child welfare system to say, okay, it's our job now to take on child safety and family well-being. I think this is a larger question facing our society of how our family's doing. And I think, one of the things that I want to do personally as a social worker that cares about these issues, and this is something that I think the Institute for Family might try to do in some meaningful ways, we need to get into communities and build relationships and listen and learn to families and ask them, how are they doing? In some meaningful way, right? Some organized way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you talk about metrics that someone believes lets you know about family well-being, a mind like mine would say, well, there's no metric out there that could explain how a family's doing better than the family itself.
Right.
So to what extent do we start going door to door?
Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, but you
said
it yourself, maybe we need to get out there into the community and talk to people. And the reason why that's so important is because I know people, including myself at different times, who were below or around the poverty line. Sure. There was a crime in the community. They might have lived in a food desert, but while all of those things are going on, they live in a warm, loving home.
Right.
And if I'm just looking at numbers and data, I might be including a home where people are doing pretty good inside the home because they're making the best of what they have. As they say, it's not always where you live, but it's how you live. So right. I like it that when you talk about family well-being, that you also talk about getting out into the community and having firsthand conversation, because that's really where the power is. Now, what is family strengthening to you? What do you think constitutes family strengthening, and how can we make that palatable to people?
Well, maybe we can come back to the palatable to people and kind of dive into what do we mean by that. But I just from the point of view of family strengthening, right? So I think we need to, and again, I'm a lot of what I'm talking about here is like I'm seeing it from my position of being a social worker in the child welfare field, and I'm thinking about like how do we think about family strengthening from the point of view that we're able to prevent child welfare involvement, right? I mean, that's got to be a clear goal that we have and that we're really focused on, and we're doing everything we can to do that. So, I mean, I think there's a number of things, but I think it starts with understanding what are the conditions that families are facing that can put them into a stressful situation that can lead to things that could end up being child maltreatment and child welfare involvement. Instead of thinking, okay, this is a family that is causing some harm or risk to their children, and we have to intervene on this parent or these parents because they're placing their children at risk. Like, that's one framework to see a family. Another framework is to say, okay, let's step back from the individual family that might be putting their child at risk, and let's think about the context around a group of families, right? And what are the conditions in that context that we should be concerned about, right? So should we be concerned about affordable housing and housing standards, right? Should we be concerned about access to jobs and jobs that have wages that pay you to actually survive and pay for your lifestyle, right? So that you're not working 3 or 4 different jobs. What about transportation? What about access to childcare? I think you mentioned food deserts somewhere in this conversation. Like, are there grocery stores in neighborhoods, right? Is there access to healthy food? What's going on in the school system in that community? So there are all these kinds of conditional factors that are at play that can, when stacked all together, they can put families into a pretty stressful situation. And, when stress goes up in a household, the risk of bad things happening for kids in that household can go up. So does that make that parent or that family bad people or unfit parents we need to intervene on by maybe removing their children? Sometimes that may be the case, but I think oftentimes it's the case that we need to look at the context around that family and try to solve those problems. And then, human beings will flourish, when their environment around them is healthy. But if the environment around isn't healthy, we're no different than the tree that's planted in bad soil. Right? If our environment around us isn't healthy, what should we expect to happen? And I think we've got to pay attention to those issues.
See, I'm hearing some paradigm shifting work that you all are doing.
Yeah.
You're not doing child welfare the way that it's been done in the 90s and the 80s and even the early 2000s. You all are trying to become more proactive as opposed to reactive. And the results can ripple through generations of people who live here in America and potentially people who live all around the world. Because the system has been reactive for a long time. And we have a lot of people who are hurt behind their foster care experience. They are hurt behind their child welfare experience. And we know we have exceptions, right? The folks who make the best of it, who became what other people might have thought that they couldn't become. But what your work says is that the thousands or millions of people who missed an opportunity to be great because they were in a reactionary system is worth a change. You guys see them as worth the change. And so now you're trying to figure out, how can we not put you all in foster care, but how can we make your family stronger as long as nobody's being outright hurt? I mean, because that's a separate emergency.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing something new from you than what I've heard from other people in the past. That's the point that I'm making.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're exactly right. And it's not just that me and others that are doing this kind of work and thinking about these things, like see the potential in people, or see that, these issues are surrounding people. Like for me, I'm motivated by it, right? Like I'm inspired by it, and I feel compelled, right, to see and I don't know if this is the right way to say it or not, the frame, I don't know, but like to see the humanity in every person, to see the dignity in every person, or that every person deserves to be seen for the best in themselves, right? Every parent loves their child, and we need to be inspired by that reality. And we need to work according to that reality, that parents love their children. And if we do things that are proactive, then maybe we don't have to react to the crisis down the road. But right now, our system is organized to wait and react to the crisis, right? That's just the way it's been set up. And, it is what it is. It's what we have. I mean, it's what we have to work with. And so, I don't know, maybe like a year or so ago, I started to think that, my vision in my work is to transform America's child welfare system so families can thrive. Like that's what kind of came in to me. It's like, this is what it is. This is what the work is. We have to transform America's child welfare system so families can thrive. What I've come to realize, though, over this last year is that work isn't within the sort of boundaries of the child welfare system, the foster care system. I don't think we can reform foster care to a place where we're impacting family well-being. The work of family well-being is way outside the box of foster care. The downstream outcomes of doing that work, or the downstream impact of doing that work, is that we reduce the need for foster care. We prevent foster care, but we don't get to family well-being through foster care reform. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
it makes all the sense in the world, Matt Anderson. And this is the reason why this platform exists. Because what you just said in a solemn and methodical way is game-changing, and it's life-changing, and it's different, and it's necessary.
Yeah.
When you talk about the realization that so many hundreds of thousands of people have had, you're talking about the reality that you cause an incalculable amount of damage when you take children away from their families. The damage cannot be evaluated. You can't come up with a number big enough. You can't come up with a number big enough to put identity on the loss of separating children from their families. There are leaders who grow up in foster care who would have grown up in their families, and so now their family is diminished, just like the individual is diminished, because they were in a symbiotic relationship that everybody needed to take place over the course of a lifetime. Another thing that you're saying, which is absolutely phenomenal, is that restructuring foster care is $1 million thought. But the other $1 million reality is that you can't do all the work of family strengthening in foster care. So in other words, we need to create a new vertical. We need to create a new industry. We need to create a new market. We need to create a new world.
Yeah.
So this ties into the origin of our conversation, which is, are we able to keep up with the paradigm shift? The paradigm is shifting.
It is.
People like yourself have come along from a life of overall championship, reflection on your life, but now you're in foster care, and you can see through a crystal lens that we need a whole new vertical of work to be happening in order to strengthen families.
Yeah.
Now, do we need to get rid of foster care?
That's a good question. I mean, I love everything you just said. I mean, you got me fired up, and you're making me bringing tears to my eyes.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, this idea of like a paradigm shift or a new vertical. I think there's a big white space right now. You know, we've been doing this webinar series that we're calling the Unlearning of Child Welfare, and so our last episode is tomorrow. Tomorrow at 3:00. And yeah, so if you put up instituteforfamily.org, that's our website, and so you can register from the homepage. It's called the Unlearning of Child Welfare. It's a 3-part series, and this is the conversation we've been having. The first two episodes were about you know, what you just described, you know, what you just talked about, and the third episode is going to be about your question of what about foster care going forward? Like, what do we do? So this is just, I think there are a lot of different ideas out there, right? About what we should do about foster care going forward. You know, my personal point of view is that for the foreseeable future, we are going to need a system that does child protection, right? I mean, for the foreseeable future, that's the reality that we have.
We should.
Yeah, we might always have that, right?
Yeah. And by no means will we ever believe that needs to change. When a child is in danger,
right?
Thank the universe for people being able to step in and help.
Right. But yeah, exactly. And so, but do we have, my concern is that we have created a child welfare system that's trying to do well-being. Like, well-being is one of the 3 federal mandates of our national child welfare system: safety, permanency, well-being, right? Safety rules the day. Child protection rules the day, as it should, because we've got to keep kids safe, right? But we have 700,000 kids a year in an under-resourced, overworked, incredibly difficult, it's the most difficult job in the world, I think, honestly.
Yeah. And to that point, all of us need to get on board and do this work. What you're raising awareness about today is that while you all, and I'm not talking about you specifically, but while the child welfare industry was protecting children, they noticed that families needed strengthening. They noticed that while they're protecting children, communities are broken. And it's all of our responsibilities to step up to the plate, strengthen families and strengthen communities.
Yep.
It needs to be all of us. Everybody should be invested in this.
Totally. Yeah, because it's not the work of, I mean, it's not the work of child welfare to do, quote, family strengthening, because so much of that work is dependent upon so many other parts of our society. So our education system is at play here. Our food distribution system is at play here. Our criminal justice system is at play here. Our transportation infrastructure, like all of it, right? Like all of it is at play here because there's not equitable access to all the resources that families need to be strong. Mm-hmm. And when you starve an environment, when you starve an ecosystem of all of the things that it needs, that ecosystem isn't healthy anymore. That's right. I told you I was a forestry major when I started in college. Yeah. But it's right. I mean, it's real, right? I mean, like our natural world is no different in these basic terms from our social world, right? You have to have the right ingredients for a healthy environment. And we just have too many communities that don't have the right ingredients. And it's up to all of us to make decisions that, direct resources, in an equitable way so that all families have access to, to freedom, ultimately to the ability to thrive.
Absolutely. Foster care, the folks who've been in foster care have been evidence that families and communities are broken. They've been broken for decades. And we never want to take our foot off of the charge of making change for those families, because what doesn't grow and adapt doesn't succeed. Mm-hmm. And when I say it doesn't succeed, I'm not saying it doesn't grow up and get a college degree. I'm saying that it tapers off. It becomes extinct. It becomes extinct.
Yeah.
We're losing lives. Mm-hmm. It's an emergency. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you, Matt, for standing in that gap, for your coworkers and the people who you cooperate with for standing in that gap, for realizing that when I look at the numbers and then I say, hey, in order for me to understand these numbers, I would actually have to go door to door, and it's impossible for me to go door to door. So how about we change the whole entire thing? Oh, how about we create a whole new situation, a whole new organization?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I agree with you. I am willing to lend my mind and myself to the causes. I founded a nonprofit. I spent years of my life in foster care. And so I have poured over these very same realities. And so it's very refreshing to hear you talk the way that you're talking. Now, have you done any work to capture, to film any of these things?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's where I got started, at least in child welfare. But even before I started working in foster care, I was, back to the sort of creative bent, I guess. Like I always thought that, so before I got into foster care, I worked with kids, high school kids that were, they were getting in trouble for drinking underage and that sort of thing, right? Like, so we ran some education programs and the court would refer kids to us and we would run them through our education classes. And, we were trying to prevent kids from drinking on the weekends, essentially, right? And so, it was good. That's important work. I mean, everybody needs education to make good decisions, right? You need to know the information. But I was always interested in like, well, what are we really trying to do here? Like, it's just a choice issue in some ways. Like kids have limited choices. If they had other things to do, maybe they would do other things. So I started asking these kids in our program about this kind of stuff. And so we just started to do really creative things. We took our building that we had, it was this house in downtown Missoula, Montana, and we turned it into like an art gallery for students, for high school kids. And we had kids DJing live parties. We had a kid that would do a live graffiti wall outside on the lawn every party that we threw. High school artists would come in and show their work. It was just like, an art gallery for high school kids, and they were just doing their creative stuff. And it was just an alternative, right? So you could do this instead of, so I was always into that kind of stuff, and that just translated into graduate school. It translated into my work as a social worker. So when I started working with kids aging out of foster care, one of those kids, Cody, didn't want to deal with the transitional living, work that we were doing on that particular day. He didn't want to talk about housing, employment, and education anymore. He wanted me to know his story. Yeah. And so he took some time to tell me his story of 7 years in foster care and, the 17 different placements that he was in. And, so he went through his life story basically, and his fear of aging out when he was going to turn 18, which was coming soon. And at the end of the story, he said, my life matters. And people need to know what happened to me. People need to know my story. And he said, we should make a movie about my life. And that was in 2008, I think, early 2008 maybe. And in the middle of 2011, we released a feature documentary called From Place to Place.
Wow.
And, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hold up. Let me slow this down. From Place to Place. Mm-hmm. Matt Anderson is the type of person that we need more of in our society. He's the type of person that you meet at an after-school program, probably because your mother's sending you there against your will. And you end up talking to him about your life and explaining to him, hey, I know that you're teaching me how to ski and roller skate, but I actually want to tell you my story. And not only does he listen to you, but he helps you to crystallize your life and make a historical record of your life and make a change in your life and bring it to fruition. The film is called From Place to Place. This is what I'm talking about when I say do right by each other. Do the best you can by each other. It doesn't matter where you come from. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, or where you are on the class scale. It's about asking the good questions and doing good work. Now, we are rounding third base, and in fact, I think we've hit a home run today. Everybody get your crown emojis ready out there. Matt, I want to let you know that I've listened to your story today. Cool. There were a few times where I got a little excited, a little bit passionate, but it's because you are in our business. You are in our business, the whole world business, and everybody can't do the work. You're doing the work. And I find that to be fascinating. So I was inspired by your story today. I want to give you a crown while you're still living. I'm giving you a crown. Everybody drop the crown emojis into the building. I'm also going to give you a respect while you're still alive to receive it. I'm letting the world know, and I'm letting you know that you, Matt Anderson, you are America's next motivator.
I love it, man. I love your energy. I take the respect. I take the crowns. I wear them with pride, and I'll do my best to keep motivating. How about that?
Hey, we're looking for more great things for you in the future. Thank you for stopping by today, all right?
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
All right, see you later.
All right.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator, Sierra, we see your crown there. It's going to have something here for you. All you've got to do, just like you did today, stop by, pick it up.